looked at 9 different components of social-emotional learning, and we're looking at different domains. And worry about when you look at this, not so much worry about, when you have to think about when you look at this, is building capacity to engage with yourself, with others, and with the world around you. So we're really looking at building engagement with ourselves, the inner, building engagement with others, the outer, and building engagement with the community around us, the other. Okay, so this is a 3-day training. That's what your training is for now. This is our history with C-Learning in City Schools of Decatur. Really, we started in 2020 during the pandemic when we went to virtual learning. We started with Wellness Wednesday classes, and we started with the first 2 chapters of the program, which was a systemic implementation where we worked with the entire district. After we came back in person, we didn't really have the capacity because we didn't have Wellness Wednesday anymore, so we really worked on training K-5 teachers to deliver this program during their morning meeting time. And we engaged with a partnership with Emory University at Tally and Fave, where we started research with grades 4 and 5. And we're continuing to engage with this program through some of our middle school and high school programs. We are looking at the lessons at the middle school, the high school during advisement. We're looking at climate training in the classrooms for the middle school. And we are also looking at overlapping IB units of inquiry. And finally, we're working on teacher wellness and preventing teacher burnout through our cognitive-based compassion training. So this is sort of an overview of the conference. Diane, you want to jump in?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, we were, first of all, we were thrilled that Emory asked us to join them on this all-expense-paid trip to India, and just even the journey there was quite a journey. We went from here to London to Delhi. We got there at 3 o'clock in the morning. After his luggage was found, we got to the hotel at about 6 a.m. And then we had one day in Delhi, and then we did a fabulous food tour, I got to tell you. And then we flew up to Dharamshala, and I can't even begin to explain what it's like to land in the Himalayan mountains, these snow-capped mountains, especially from the hustle and bustle of Delhi to go up there. And that is where the conference was held, up in Dharamshala, in the Dalai Lama's new library. And we had 4 sessions each day, very intensive sessions. The first session was hearing the Dalai Lama speak himself, talking about compassion. He was extremely contemplative himself that day, wanted to pass the night before, and so he was very reflective. And I mean, to sit in a room with 70 people and watch this man share his knowledge and wisdom was overwhelming. But the other thing about the conference, there was something about being there with people from around the globe who share a passion for educating young minds and hearts. And, you know, this was actually an update. This conference was held as an update. The Dalai Lama charged Emory University with creating a curriculum for social, emotional, and ethical secular ethics. And this was how far have we come? And that was in 2017. With the pandemic, this was delayed, which worked out well for us. And then we got to be a part of this. So there were 3 of us, as you said. Natalie is a 3rd grade teacher at Tally, and I cannot tell you, she was nominated as top dog because she was amazing. She represented herself, her school, this district, and so well. And she actually got up there. There were some students from around the globe who were attending, which was also just incredibly heartwarming. And she demonstrated a lesson, and she was the first one to go, and she knocked it out of the park. You guys would have and to be on this stage with these people you don't know, I mean, that's how good this curriculum is, that she was able to engage with them. And then Ben was on an incredible panel discussion, talking about our implementation, and he has really led that work. I got to talk about the CBCT, which we'll talk a little bit more later, and then Dr. Fraser from Emory talked about the research she did, and the research she did with our 4th and 5th grade students.
So these are just some pictures of Natalie's presentation, where she talked about the resilience zone and teaching children how to be in the resilience zone when they're under stress and increasing wellness. She isn't here today to talk about it, but she really did knock it out of the park and was able to do a lesson in front of people from all over the world. And this was live streamed across So what I talked about was systematic implementation and kind of what we're doing here in City Schools of Decatur. And what I found out when I started talking to other educators and other mental health professionals across the world is every country is having a lot of the same difficulties. The pandemic has really caused a lot of stress, a lot of trauma for a lot of students, and a lot of people are left without that trauma. So I presented on how we've taken C-learning, and you can see from this is the laser pointer up over here. C-learning is kind of the keystone. The keystone of our systematic SEL implementation here in the district. We're overlapping with expeditionary learning. We're overlapping with the International Baccalaureate Program. It's trauma-informed for kids who have gone through trauma over the pandemic. It overlaps with restorative practices. And so I just really talked about how we're focusing on overlapping this work with what's already in place, so it's not a burden on teachers. I also talked about building SEL structures through overlapping with our instructional curriculum. C-learning isn't just a curriculum with one-on-one lessons, it's also an instructional framework that when we've trained our teachers overlaps with the approaches to learning, the character profile, and the habits of scholarship of experiential learning.
And the Do4 framework.
As well as the Do4 framework with culturally responsive practices. So we're really trying to make sure that this framework and these lessons enhance what we're already doing. Finally, I talked about grade articulation because what we teach young kids is different when we teach older children. So we've mapped out a certain grade articulation so that you're not just learning the skills in high school. Now you're implementing the skills in order to engage with your communities, engage with the systems around you, and work to build those secular ethical practices and generalize them as a human being. So this is just a little bit about the research. Dr. Tyra Lynn Fraser, who's with Emory, led the research here in the district, and she's not able to come today, and she could talk for 30 minutes. If she needed to, she could come back and look at you again, and I'll talk about this a little bit further. But really what she looked at were these different areas of compassion, and this is the data from the U.S. And so what we can see is that she looked at compassion, some different constructs, and how they were impacted by this curriculum for 4th and 5th graders all over the world. And we looked at empathetic concern, and these are feelings of empathy for others. And what you can see is this is what it looks like across the year for children whose business as usual. These are schools where they didn't do anything. They didn't do C-learning. Schools that did C-learning, there were significant trends where empathetic concern went up significantly over baseline. Academic self-efficacy. This is believing that you can do hard problems, believing that you're able to do the work that is coming to you in the classrooms. What we can see is no change for the control. With treatment, it's skyrocketed. When you really think about the engagement with self-regulation, engagement with self-awareness, engaging your community, it really helps believing you can do hard problems and hard work. Next is perspective taking. We think about common humanity. We think about compassion for others. We think about putting yourself in someone else's shoes. What you can see with business as usual, it actually goes down over the years. So if you do nothing, perspective taking gets worse for most 4th and 5th graders. With C-learning, it went up, again, like all the others, positive effects. So if anything, C-learning is protective for the normal decrease of perspective taking habits. Finally, intrinsic motivation. We think about how do we motivate kids? How do we get them to have that general motivation to get going? It goes down over time, which makes sense. By the end of the year, kids don't want to do anything. They're ready for summer. They're not motivated anymore. C-learning caused significant increases in intrinsic motivation. So this is just the beginning research, the first fly-through over the data. We got this hot off the presses, so there's not really close analysis yet of this data, but she was able to let us present to you all.
I did have a question if I could ask,
Sure.
right? So I think you partly, in that last statement, you probably answered one question. The orange lines here are our data, what we're seeing with our kids versus the national control.
That's a good question. So our data hasn't been disaggregated yet across the United States. However, the data includes our data. Because since it is just kind of hot off the presses, they haven't disaggregated that data yet.
Sure. And then the y-axis, is that just an indexed percent change, or what are we?
That's a good question. I think that's why something she'd have to come and talk about. I know it's significant at the 0.05 level, right?
I can see that. Yeah. Okay.
So I think it's. I'm not really sure. That's a good question. We'd have to ask Dr.
Okay.
This is now the compassion piece that Diane presented.
Right, and so as I said earlier, the Dalai Lama has charged us with delivering this curriculum to increase compassion because, as he says, compassion and love are not mere luxuries, right? This is what we need as a survival as a species. And so that is what drives him. That is, he said, that is where he focuses not only his own practice, but what he hopes for his legacy to be is spreading compassion. And so one of the ways we do this for adults is through cognitively based compassion training. This is a research-based, this has been around for a while, this is the adult version of C-Learning, and we have started to implement it with them as a pilot. We're doing research with them, mainly to combat teacher burnout, enhance job satisfaction, and we're looking at tailoring this curriculum to educators. So traditionally, this program is offered 8 weeks for 90 minutes. And, you know, the reality is that as much as people know that they need this, as much as teachers know that they need this, asking them to come in 90 minutes early, we can't find 90 minutes in a day, and to stay 90 minutes late is really difficult because of that, because they are stretched. And so with that, I mean, just like guys, we know we're supposed to floss our teeth. Do we do it every day? No, right? So good for them, that would help them. It's hard to engage them. So what we're trying to do is customize this for teachers and help Emory to determine how this could fit into a regular school day. And so, but in the fall, we did do a traditional program with administrators, some of whom are in here and participated. And then we also did a small pilot at Decatur High School. And this spring, we are doing 3 classes. We host them on Wednesdays. I'm one of the teachers because I'm getting certified in CBCT. And we hope to expand it again in the fall.
Positive feedback from the teachers. This has been the regular stress of being a teacher. We also got to play a little bit. So these are some pictures at the conference. We went to Agra, saw the Taj Mahal. We went some hiking in the Himalayas as well. If you guys need more information, I know that we don't have a lot of time. These are links. The newest PowerPoint we can get to you has links for each of the videos of the presentation. So if you want to know more about the research, there's a link here from Dr. Fraser talking about the research. We have the actual live classroom demonstration from Natalie Bunshu. We have Diane and myself as well for the links. So,
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. At this time, we'll move on to public comment. Dr. Furman, do we have any members of the public signed up to share comments this evening?
Yes, we have 2.
All right. As a reminder, and I read this every time, for all speakers and members of the audience, the public comment portion of the meeting is a time for the public to address the board. It is limited to district parents, students, residents, employees, businesses, and organizations. The time limit for all speakers is 3 minutes. Person speaking will not be permitted to yield the floor or transfer unused time to other speakers. Comments during public comment should be addressed to the board as a body, not to individual members. Speakers should be courteous and professional. The chair may terminate public comments that are profane, vulgar, defamatory, or disruptive. Speakers may not address confidential student or personnel matters, but may submit such concerns to the superintendent in writing. Members of the board will not address persons presenting public comment or speak to the substance of any comments made during public comment. However, a member of the administrative team will follow up with persons speaking at the board meeting. Dr. Furman, will you please call our first speaker?
Yes, our first speaker, Marty Grosden.
Good evening. Hope you all are doing well tonight. I'm standing here, my name is Marty Grosden. I wear a variety of hats here in the community. I think I'm representing all of them, but truly I'm just representing as a human. I just signed up today to be here and just kind of wrote notes to share with you. It's really a big thank you, like to you guys and a lot of the people here in the community who work for CSC or are involved. 5 years ago, this next week, I received a call from Jennifer Ross, who worked with the police department. We had lost a student, class of 2019, to suicide. He was my intern in a program that I worked in going into middle school, and graduated, would have walked across the stage with my son in June 2019, 5 years ago. It's crazy. So I thought it was important to share some successes with all of you here since that time. One, this is wearing my hat being the Youth Development Coordinator with Decatur Prevention Initiative. Our students, your students, during Suicide Prevention Week in September, and the event during the lunches at the high school, students had the opportunity, in fact, I think I gave some of these to each of you, to take these. I was standing in a local store, a parent stopped me, said I looked familiar. We got to talking, she had a freshman. I thought she was familiar, and I said, hey, how's freshman year? In a nutshell, she told me that her son, I'm making sure I'm not, yes, her son was not in school for a couple months because he needed to go get some help. She was raving about how the Student Center was supporting. She was raving about the connection of education while he was away. And then she said, said this bracelet saved him. Because she got his phone when he went into the inpatient facility and saw his texting. He had been texting 90 days. So your students are students in the community. That is a huge win. When I received that call from Jennifer Ross, she reached out to me because she knows I work with youth in the city. And I kept for a while, like, even wondering if it was my son, because I told her not to tell me the name. And for like 2 minutes, it was, like 5 years. This is a success. I want to thank you for the Student Center, not only at the high school, the physical space, but now we have it at Beacon Hill Middle School. For the sake of time, oh my gosh, there was a huge, huge success there, that's all I'll say. I'm happy to, I'll type an email to you instead. And I just really want to put a big plea out for ASSIST. I know some of you have gone through that training. I know some of you have signed up and had to pull out, completely understandable. If you can make it, it's fabulous, which sounds really kind of crazy, but it is fabulous for many things. But most importantly, I wanted to come here, if there's a way to find substitutes for teachers so they can attend. There have been so many teachers who sign up and then cannot attend because they don't have access to subs. I know there's a shortage to begin with, but if it means paying a little bit more or something to allow a staff member to be there, it is a 2-day commitment, a full 2-day commitment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Kirsten Denise.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So I'm going to apologize from the top. I can be a lot, so there's a lot in that handout. My name is Kristen Denius. I am a parent of a 10th grader at the high school and a 7th grader at the middle school. And I wanted to come and talk to you guys about grading at CSU. And first off the top, I will fully admit I have not always paid very close attention to grading, other than just report cards when they come home. And nothing that I'm about to talk about today is because my child, or either of my children, has actually been negatively affected by our switch to using mode to calculate final grades. But what happened, so I first started thinking about grading as more than just a report card about a year ago, when I'm sure you all fondly remember the discussion that happened around the potential of changing the grading scale. And I actually emailed all of you guys and was opposed to that because off the top, I didn't understand it. So I didn't really think anything, and then of course there was a work session, there was information provided, the decision was made to put a pause on that and do a little bit more research and come back to it this year. And then, so I didn't think about grading anymore again. And I didn't think about grading much at all this year because I hadn't heard anything more about that particular initiative. Well, then recently my 7th grader started coming home and telling me that she had been hearing about, she'd been hearing information at school, in the middle school, about the upcoming report cards, and that mode was going to be applied to the final grades that were coming home, and teachers were concerned that parents might not understand why the grades were different and why the grades were lower than expected. And so then I thought, well, I haven't seen anything about that. And I'll just admit, and as part of my being a lot, I keep all of the emails, all of them. I have folders. It's much. So I thought, okay, well, I must have missed something, right? Because there's a lot, and I will admit, even though I do read them all, and I generally click all the links, sometimes I miss things. So 2 weeks ago, I had COVID, fully recovered, but I had a little downtime. So I started going through all of my emails that I received from the district, all of the Friday follow-ups, and I didn't see anything about using mode. So then I went through a number of things. I reviewed all of the agendas and minutes for 10 board meetings. I watched the recordings of 4 of those meetings, the April 12th, May 5th, July 12th, and November 8th meetings last year. I looked at the agenda and the minutes of 7 board work sessions, and I listened to 2 of them, the ones that had anything in the minutes about the grading. I looked at all the Friday follow-ups, and I'm just going to, so I'm out of time, I'm going to tell you there's one public discussion about using those. That was in November It was very preliminary discussion. There was no information, there was no explanation about why we're using it. And so I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying we don't know why it's happening. I did run some experiments with numbers and, right, I have not come up with one scenario in my experiment where using mode did not result in either an equal or a lower final score for the student. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing if we have a problem with grade inflation, but I haven't heard anybody talk about that either. So I'm concerned that this is already happening. Parents don't understand it. There's really not any resources that parents can go look at to understand it. And let me tell you, I looked at all of them. I clicked all the links. I watched all the videos. I actually now kind of support the change to the grading scale. I mean, like, I've convinced myself on that point. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't see the mode information, and I don't see the justification for it. So I'm just concerned that I think we need a little bit more information about that, and I would love to see that happen. I've not gotten to half of what I wanted to tell you guys, so I will probably just come back next month and tell you. But just understand, there's a lot of parents who are really confused about this. The communication seems to have been pushed down to the school level, and it has not necessarily happened in a way that people are aware even of the change or are understand, can have done it. So I appreciate your time, and I'm sorry that I went over.
Thank you. Thank you to all members of the CSD community for sharing your comments this evening. At this time, I will turn the agenda over to Dr. Furman to share the superintendent's comments this evening.
All right, good evening. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. I've got several updates for the board and the community. So first, I wanted to go over some updates, announcements, and celebrations. On February 3rd, we received a notification from the Georgia Department of Education informing us that based on our 2021-22 school year data, CSD has been determined to meet all of our IDEA performance compliance indicators at 100%. This means that CSD is considered to be meeting all of the requirements and purposes of IDEA, which, as you know, is federal law that governs. This is one of those badges of honor that our district has earned over the years and continues to consistently meet the high expectations. It's noteworthy that our initial evaluations of children referred for special education evaluations is once again 100%, even when other districts in the metro area are still struggling to catch up from referrals in the post-pandemic area. For special education at the district office and at the level, and for Ms. Holt, the Chief of State and Federal Programs, for her hard work and diligence in supervising the special education department. I wanted to give a shout out to the 9 to 5 musical. It starts on March 2nd. You can purchase your tickets at decaturperforms.org, and I've already got mine and cannot wait to attend opening night. Tomorrow, we will send out the second issue of our Staff Scoop. It's an internal staff newsletter for all CSD employees. The newsletter, we switched kind of the mode of it, and it's going to have the top 5 things that all staff in City Schools of Decatur need to know in the upcoming weeks across the district. Also want to give a shout out to our Human Resources Department. They had a job fair on February 11th, and it was a huge success, and we were able to issue 5 letters of intent for some of our highest need job areas. We are on schedule for staffing next year, and we will be issuing employee contracts later this week. Staff will have 10 days from issue date to sign and return their contract via our electronic platform. Excuse me, the Dyslexia Task Force has been hard at work finalizing their evaluation and writing their recommendations that they will be sharing with the board at a subsequent work session. We finalized the school-based staffing allocations for next year with all of our principals, and we will not be reducing any school-based allotments next year. And we have plans to add and continue adding to our counseling staff and several teaching positions where enrollment has been increased. Our lobbyists are continuing to work with the DeKalb delegation to move our senior tax exemption and reapportionment bills through the legislative session. And lastly, I'm thrilled to share that DHS was named an AP Honor School in 3 categories. For AP Expansion School, meaning that they had 25% growth in AP student participation from May 2021 to May 2022. Also an AP School of Distinction, which means that at least 20% of the total students taking the AP, at least 50% of the students that took the exams scored a 3 or higher. And also we were named an AP STEM School. This means that minimum of students were taking a minimum of 5 tests in 4 of the different AP STEM courses. So lots of celebrations going on. As just want to give the board an update, we're still continuing our work on the board policy manual. Even though GSEA has wrapped up their component of that, we still know that we have a lot of work to do when updating and making sure we have a rigorous policy manual with the accompanying procedures, so that we have a very well-rounded board policy manual. So still work to come on that as we move through filling out that board policy manual. Wanted to give a brief update, well, not a brief update, I've got several things here to talk through on our strategic plan. So we are really in the final stages of working and fleshing out all the details in the strategic plan. You can see it's very satisfying for me to fill in my dots as I go through on my calendar here. We've got one more community meeting before the board will hear the overall strategic plan. We are reconvening our planning team to share with them some of the updates, small updates to our strategic planning map. And then at March 7th, we will be presenting the board with the draft of the strategic plan for their feedback and input. And then at the March 14th meeting, we will present that to the board for final approval. Once it is finally approved, we have 3 town halls scheduled to kind of launch the plan and share it with our community. So I'm excited for those coming up. Last month, I shared that our vision and mission team is hard at work. We contracted with a company called Leadership Bubble to facilitate this work, and I could not be more pleased with the work of Dr. Washington Bass and Ms. Pereira for their leadership on this task. They have exceeded our expectations at every turn throughout the process. The chart here shows the scope of the work, not just for the revision of our CSD vision and mission, but we're also undertaking developing a portrait of a graduate. You'll see the timeline started in January, and it's not set to end until May. I know that may seem like a long time, but we are being very deliberate about bringing in a representative group of stakeholders together through this process and centering our conversation and lifting the voices of those that have been historically marginalized. You'll notice that there's several opportunities for stakeholder engagement throughout the process, including a community survey, focus groups, and our cross-functional leadership team. So this is the cross-functional leadership team that we've tapped to support our work on this. So it's a great group. Thank you, Dr. Sultan, for serving on that team as well. They've had their first meeting, and they have their second one coming up. So I wanted to give the board just and the community a teaser as it comes to our strategic plan, because as it is getting finished and finalized, it is becoming a very beautiful plan. It's very exciting, and it's very motivating. And I wanted to start with reminding everyone that at opening day, I quickly shared the overview of Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. And this is this concept that it's very important to identify your why. Identifying our why is essential if we are going to become an anti-racist school system. And I'm excited to share with the board that as we put the finishing touches on our strategic plan, we have developed a clear why for our work in City Schools of Decatur. So what is our why? Our country promises freedom, justice, and an opportunity for all. CSD believes that for that to happen, public school systems must stand firmly against the marginalization for any child. For that to be realized, CSD must be culturally responsive, culturally representative, and inclusive, while we continue to encourage and incubate an honest conversation and courageous discourse about the issues that are most important and sacred to the well-being of our country and our democracy, so that our students continue to grow and be committed stewards of a country and world where marginalization, injustices, and any discriminatory practices are rooted out and eradicated. We believe that as a result, all students will be able to live a healthy, self-sufficient life, that they will be lifelong learners, participate in a productive civic engagement, and feel fulfilled in their careers. As the new strategic plan was developed, we centered our work around 3 core beliefs. The first one is that of developing the whole learner. CSD is committed to ensuring the social, emotional, cognitive growth, and mental health of each student. We believe that our gifts and talents of our students while addressing the needs for our students rather than forcing our students to adjust to our system. Our second core belief is that no learner can be marginalized. And when we say all, we mean all, with a deliberate focus on paying the educational debt to students of color who have been historically marginalized the most. CSD will serve as the final belief that we focused on was being future-driven. CSD recognizes that the current school model was born out of the 20th century industrial education model, and those practices and skills need to be updated. We will continually be asking, are we preparing our students for our past or their future? As we move to the next circle, we explored our how. How will CSD accomplish our why? To achieve the ambitious outcome, I outlined, just as I just outlined, with our community, and we identified key strategic accelerators that leverage our strengths to improve our growth areas, while also taking advantage of many opportunities in our community. Our strategic accelerators are also designed to take into account potential roadblocks so that we can navigate around those. Finally, we come to our what, and these we are calling our priority student outcomes. These are high-level outcomes crafted to intentionally keep our focus on students as the main purpose of all of our work in CSD. For all of our priority student outcomes, we have developed additional incremental goals for our system to achieve that build upon each other so we can eventually achieve these big, audacious goals. The plan will serve as a roadmap for the next 5 years to guide our school system and community as we address systemic inequities and injustices that impact our community and our nation. This plan provides CSD with a clear focus on students as we confront and overcome racial and economic and social injustices and disparities. The CSD strategic plan will harness our resources and energies to achieve our priority student outcomes that will ensure each student has the access, opportunity, and support to succeed in college, career, and life. This plan will ensure CSD can equitably and effectively meet the needs of all students. This is a teaser to get you excited for our plan, so you are ready to lean in and listen to it because it is really a wonderful piece of work that I'm immensely proud of. And I'm really excited to launch this work and share it with the community because I think it is really going to be a unifying plan for our school system. So that's all I have for tonight.
Could I request that, I mean, in appreciation of the amount of work that's been done and that needs to that meeting on the 7th, the work session, could we get the plan so that we are reacting to it with thought as opposed to in the moment?
Yeah, we're working on an executive summary, an overview, a flyer. We've got all kinds of communication tools that we are working on so that you guys can really understand and help process and provide some of the fine tuning to help move it to take it even to the next level.
Great, thank you.
Do you know the timeline for the charter approval
Oh, good
circle
question.
that you filled in?
Yeah, the charter has been sent to the state. We have scheduled a follow-up meeting with the state. They do a quick interview with us. And then after that meeting, they send it off to the State Department of Education. And then it's sometime by the end of June, we'll get a response.
Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep. Chairman, that's all I have unless there's other questions.
Thank you, Dr. Furman. We now move to the chair's report for this evening. First, I want to say congratulations to the DHS girls and boys basketball team. Both teams are winners of the 2023 Region 4-5A basketball tournament. The GHSA tournament round 1 is tomorrow, Wednesday the 22nd at the high school. The girls tip off at 6 and the boys follow at 7:30. If you can, come out and support the Bulldogs tomorrow night. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service occurred. We've heard of many groups that participated in service projects over that weekend, like Close Up, Junior Beta Club, and many more. One example of a service project from that weekend is the DHS Skills USA MLK Service Project. They provided 60 hours worth of beautification labor for 2 residents in Oakhurst. Thank you to all the staff, students, and families who worked to honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and just make our community stronger. February 6th through the 10th was National School Counseling Week. Thank you to our amazing school counselors for their tremendous impact in helping students achieve school success and their dedication to helping students just dream big. February is also Love the Bus Month. I want to extend a huge thank you to our bus drivers for their dedication to safely transporting our students to and from school every day. I had the opportunity to attend the Beacon Hill Middle School Junior Beta Club induction. Congratulations to the 230 6th, 7th, and 8th grade Beacon Hill students recently inducted. These students are going to grow into the leaders the school and community focus on the 4 pillars of Beta: achievement, character, leadership, and service. Congratulations to the debate team at DHS for a stellar showing at Midtown High School. Will Kochel and Autumn Pollock were first place. Ida Chapman was first place in informative. Arden Nazell was 4th place in impromptu. Lots of varsity speakers. Congratulations to the debate team. The ECLC Support Staff of the Year is a big congratulations to Miss Caritha Hall, ECLC Support Staff of the Year winner. The award is given annually to a full-time classified staff member. Nominations come from colleagues. An excerpt from her nomination form. Caritha is a positive ray of sunshine for every student and adult in the building. She knows the names of all the students and greets each one every day. If a child is upset, she provides comfort, time, and space for them to settle. She is the foundation of College Heights. She's the person to go to if you need anything material or support. She is one who has the pulse on everything happening all at once in our building. Caritha is a collaborator and coordinator who builds connections with all students, safe and heard. She is the first pillar of a safe, supportive, and inviting community that you encounter at College Heights. She lets you know that not only do you belong here, but we are excited you are here, and this is your home. Beautiful words. Congratulations. On Saturday, the 14th of January, architectural students from Decatur Career Academy traveled to MODA in Atlanta to participate in a hip-hop architecture event hosted by the Atlanta chapter of the National Organization of Minority Architects. Hip-hop architecture is a design movement, embodies the collective creative energies that give rise to hip-hop music. Its designers produce spaces, buildings, environments that translate hip-hop's energy and spirit into built form. This event consists of students collaborating with other architecture students, architects, designers, community planners to develop design concepts reflective of the community needs using only reclaimed material that responded to prompts such as music, movement, and color. Band news, the DHS had 13 students participate in the University of Georgia and the University of Tennessee Chattanooga honor band events. These students were selected among thousands from around the Southeast. Each university created several honor band groups. For the weekend, all our students auditioned and placed relatively high in their respective honor bands at these events. Congratulations to senior Megan Thomas on being offered a scholarship to UTC at the end of the honor band event. We're very proud of all of our band students. CSD, in participation with the Decatur Fire Department, offered CPR first aid training to all district staff. Way to go, district staff members who gained or renewed their CPR first aid certification. Thank you for your dedication to the safety and saving lives. Westchester kicked off Black History Month with a visit by Vanessa Brantley Newton, author and illustrator of Becoming Vanessa. Vanessa Brantley Newton shared that our differences are what make us unique, and despite looking and feeling different, she learned to be proud of who she really was. The student participated in a play on word games and learned to draw pictures using letters, numbers, and shapes. Congratulations go out to the DHS 10th grade student Zeke Warner, who was selected for the High School Honors Performance Series. He joined other students in New York City, where they learned from world-renowned conductors. The honors performance occurred on Saturday, February 4th at Carnegie Hall. Way to go, Zeke. Thanks for representing Decatur. The Beacon Hill Chorus and Decatur High School Advanced Treble Chorus had a magnificent concert during the Georgia Music Educators Association conference. The students performed alongside some of the leading chorus programs in Georgia. Their performance were described as nothing less than brilliant. Bravo to Dr. Hirschkorn and the BHMS Chorus and DHS Advanced Treble Chorus. Following that, the BHMS Clarinet Ensemble wowed band directors and music educators all over Georgia with their outstanding performance. They couldn't have ended the last day of the GMEA conference on a higher note. Way to go, Clarinet Ensemble. There was an 8th grade service project. Congrats to Mr. Kenneth Kenny Jackson, who appeared on a recent episode of the Kelly Clarkson Show for his efforts in a neat service project he did for his 13th birthday. Kenny chose a nonprofit called Eco Sneakers, an organization that recycles, reduces, and reuses shoes to donate to those in need, as well as repurpose shoes to make athletic surfaces. Being really into sneakers himself and seeing a need, Kenny jumped right into supporting this effort. He raised over $1,200 in 1 month from family and friends, exceeding his goals. What a fantastic way to implement the IB learner profile trait of caring. Great job, Kenny. We are very proud of you. Congratulations to the high school JV and varsity Winter Guard members for an outstanding debut competition at Cass High School. There are 49 color guards competing in the show. Our guards placed 6th overall in each of their respective classes. Both JV and varsity earned 3rd place in the general effect. The next competition is the 25th. Go Winter Guard members. Each month, the Beacon Hill Fab Lab puts on a makerspace workshop. This month's workshop introduced students to woodworking and basic tools, where all participants made their very own gumball candy machines. This month's lab had nearly 24 participants. All the Fab Lab makerspace workshops are run by the design engineering instructor, Mr. Matt Hauser. The labs are open to all community members, young and old. This year's workspaces have introduced participants and students to woodworking, vinyl cutting, apparel, and much more. Tally Street, congrats to Zen Olson Masick, who's a 4th grader, who was recently named one of the Spring 2023 Junior Council Members of the Week. The Junior Council is made up of 12 students ages 8 to 14 who learn from the Week Junior editors and mentors about how to become strong voices in their community. The swim team had a strong showing at state, came up close recently. They brought 16 swimmers to the meet and had so many great ones. The DHS boys finished 11th in the 4A, 5A division. The girls came 14th. The team set 3 new records at the state meet. First year, Isaiah Lewis posted a time of 21:79 in the 50 free. And another exciting race, the DHS girls 200 free relay team, including Greta Tell, Lily Collins Smythe, Melanie Joyner, and Leah Robertson, set a new school record. Congratulations to our boys 200 freestyle team for getting 3rd place and also set a new school record. The Decatur Career Academy culinary students earned gold medals. Congratulations to Lily Collins Smythe, Melina Clavijo, for earning gold medals in their individual culinary competitions. We wish them luck in the next round in March in hopes of moving to the National Leadership Conference in December. The Tally Street teachers and students have been grouped into 6 houses. We saw that last month. They've been using earning points for their houses as a way to... This past Friday, students celebrated meeting their goal of 19,000 points by duct taping the admin staff to the wall of their gym, where they'd have to watch Tally Rally for the morning. They far exceeded their goal, and quickly, the kids loved earning points for their houses through showing Tiger Pride, the Tally PBIS acronym for good behavior. Way to go, Tally Tigers. To learn more, you can watch that board meeting that happened on January 10th in the houses. In celebration of Black History Month, and in partnership with the Little Shop of Stories, Westchester hosted a pop-up bookstore featuring books by Black authors, highlighting themes such as diversity, family and friendships, courage and joy. Families were able to drop in all day during student-led conferences to support the bookstore. Many had the opportunity to talk and bond with each other over their appreciation of all the beautiful books. Way to go, Westchester. And in Preschool Cares 2, Miss Jones Boynton's preschool class made personal care bags for the homeless as a service project instead of exchanging Valentine's Day cards and candy. They decided as a class it was important to spread the love to others less fortunate. Way to go to her students, Candace Jones Boynton, Taylor Tate, Ann Taggart, Tabitha Battle, Rashad Russell, and Peyton Russey. I had the opportunity to speak at the Decatur Business Association event along with Mayor Garrett, the state of the city. It was a fantastic event. It's a great opportunity to share and collaborate. I want to thank the Decatur Business Association for the invitation. Along that lines, Dr. Sultan, Dr. Furman, and myself were able to sit down with Mayor Pro Tem Tony Powers, Mayor Patty Garrett, as well as the city manager, just to keep up on what's happening between our two groups and relevant things such as updated lights around the school district areas, missing middle housing policies that are passing in the city, as well as our reapportionment proposal that we have working through. Finally, a small update on our superintendent search. We've been able to stick with our calendar that we've posted a few times. We're in the middle of interviewing candidates for the superintendent, and we'll continue to do so into next week. We anticipate a second round of interviews and an announcement sometime in March. That is it. We now move to consent agenda items, which include personnel reports, school nutrition, and monthly financial reports, SmartNet renewal contract, and the 23-24 school board calendar. May I have a motion to approve consent items 1 through 5?
To approve consent items 1 through 5?
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The consent agenda items 1 through 5 were approved. This month, the board was provided copies of the monthly school data reports as informational only. Dr. Furman, is there any additional information the board members should know about this month's informational reports?
Yeah, I just wanted to share quickly about the Acadians data that was in for the lower elementary, and a couple things for the public to know if you're looking at those packets. The Acadians data for kindergarten and first grade are given beginning of the year and mid-year, because the same subtests are not given in both the beginning of the year and the end of the year, or middle year. And then second grade, the students that took the Cadence test in second grade at the beginning of the year in second grade, if they scored at a level that they met the end of the year benchmark, because it tests the same subtest, we did not retest those students. So if at the beginning of the year they show mastery of the end of the year stuff, we didn't reassess them. So just as you look at that data, if you're in the public kind of giving that a look, I just wanted to explain that difference in there.
So to clarify, the beginning of the year data is all students?
All students. And then mid-year data for second grade is just the students that did not meet the benchmark.
Okay.
Because some schools have just mid-year data and
Right.
some have beginning and mid-year.
Yeah. We didn't tell them one way or the other what to put in there, so some of them did both.
If we could just ask or direct for future state, we have both beginning and mid. I think that longitudinal information is
Sure.
important for us to see.
Yep.
Thank you.
Agreed.
And then did we add that clarifying statement to the packet as it's posted?
We did not yet.
Okay.
That is part of the minutes as well.
I'd move that we do that.
Okay. We'll put that in the notes section for that one.
All right. We now move on to our discussion items for this evening. And we now have 4 discussion items for this evening. Dr. Furman, will you please introduce our presenters?
I will. Our first presenter this evening is our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Lenita Brune. She's going to present the board with the budget summary.
Good evening, Board Chair and Vice Chair, members of the Board, Superintendent Furman, committee. This evening, I present to you the district's budget. The information presented today is for informational purposes only, as needed for discussion on the current fiscal year 23 and upcoming fiscal year 24 general fund budget. All budgeted, with the exception of the current fiscal year 23 budget, and actual numbers were pulled from the audit report. Fiscal year 22 actual numbers are unaudited and are subject to change if adjusted entries are required by the auditors. There are a variety of areas that we will review, including a brief overview of the city, the district, the budget calendar, a general fund overview of the district's budgeted and actual expenses and revenue and the budget process. This slide is an overview of some of the major factors in the city that impact the district's local revenue. The top 10 employers in the city are listed, with DeKalb County government having the largest quantity of employees, followed by the district as the second largest employer of the city. The top 10 taxpayers are listed, with AMCO, a real estate developer, being the largest taxpayer, followed by Martin. Fiscal year 23 data facts for City Schools of Decatur include, we have 12 learning facilities, including the Early Learning Centers and Virtual Academy. We have a little under 6,000 students, with approximately 5,502 in K-12. The 5,502 K-12 enrollment is based off of the fiscal year 23 FTEs in the initial QBE report. The allotment sheet from the state uses other factors such as scheduling and disability in addition to enrollment to obtain the FTE, which is tied directly to our state budget. The K-12, the gender rate is almost half males and half females. We have a free and reduced eligibility rate of 12.2%, which is an increase of about 3.45 from the previous year. The financial efficiency rating measures an individual school district's per pupil spending in relation to the academic achievement of its students. A 3-year average of per pupil expenditures is scored from college and career-ready performance index are used to determine a district's rate. The high score of 5 is reached from having a low per pupil expenditure and a high college and career-ready performance index. The district score of 2.5 indicates that the district has a high per pupil expenditure and a high college and career-ready performance index. The fiscal year 23 general fund budget is approximately $87.8 million. With the current fiscal year 23 budget and the FTE enrollment of 5,502, the per pupil expenditure amount is $15,959, which is a slight increase from last year. And the millage rate is the same as last year at 21. The district's graduation rate is 96.9, which is about 12% higher than the state's graduation rate. City Schools of Decatur is the 62nd largest district in the state and is considered a medium-sized district. This is your fiscal year 24 budget calendar. The first meeting was November's work session. We discussed the budget timeline and priorities. At January's work session, an overview of East Block 6 was presented to the board. Today, we will review the fiscal year 23 general fund budget primer. The finance department is working with departments and schools in preparation of the fiscal year 24 budget. In March, I will present updates to the fiscal year 23 budget and the fiscal year 24 base budget. At March work session, we will review the fiscal year 24 budget and various options based on the priorities of the board. We will also have multiple town hall meetings in March. At April's board meeting, the tentative budget is scheduled to be approved, followed by a public hearing in May and tentative approval of the millage rate. Initial approval of the budget is scheduled for May board. In June, we will have 3 public hearings on the property tax millage rate. We have confirmed with the city in the county that we can advertise and tentatively adopt a higher millage rate, and if the tax digest comes in higher than projected, we can adopt a lower millage rate in June without being required to re-advertise. This will ensure that taxpayers are not required to pay a higher tax rate than what the district needs. The district uses fund accounting to track the amount of revenue assigned for different purposes. Assigning revenue by fund provides more transparency and accountability. General, capital, school nutrition, and special revenue operates under. The Board of Education approves and adopts the annual budget at the aggregate level of fund type. General fund is the district's primary operating account. This fund has less restrictions than any other fund and is the largest source of revenue and expenditures for the district. General fund budget history. This is your general fund budget history. A special thank you to Board Member Hunt for providing the template. This is a snapshot of the general fund budget history from 2019 to present. Be mindful that when the board approves the budget, this specifies the maximum amount that can be spent. For example, if you are purchasing software, the budget may be $200,000. However, after negotiating, the actual cost may be $180,000, which will result in budget savings of $20,000. As the CFO/procurement manager, my goal is to come in under budget. I want to make sure all departments have the resources needed to purchase the commodities and services they need. However, I want them to spend the funds conservatively and make every effort to get the best price. I will go over in detail the 5-year budget history for revenues and expenditures in upcoming slides. At the bottom of this slide is the history of the district's fund balance or reserve. Highlighted in yellow is the actual beginning fund balance and the budgeted appropriations that were projected to balance the budget. Highlighted in green is the actual fund balance and the actual appropriations that were required to balance the budget. The fiscal year 23 current fiscal year appropriations are the budgeted appropriations. When you compare the budgeted appropriations to the actual appropriations listed in red font, you see the actuals came in less than the budgeted, with the exception of fiscal year 21, where we used an additional $634,000 of due mainly to unexpected purchases for the activities. In fiscal year 2019, the budget projected $8 million would be needed from the reserve to balance the budget. However, at the end of the year, $956,840 was credited back to the reserve, which increased the fund balance to $17.5 million. Based off of my review of fiscal year 2019, all budget amendments were not presented to the board for changes, and this would account for the district's difference in what was projected and the actual amount. In fiscal year 2020, less reserves were used primarily due to receiving ESSER funds and reallocating expenditures from general funds to ESSER funds. In fiscal year 22, we budgeted to use $4.3 million of reserve. However, after the state restored austerity and correcting an error in the financial software that overstated positions and benefits, we actually increased the reserve by 1.5. In the current fiscal year 23 budget, the projected beginning fund balance was increased by approximately $1.3 million from what was initially projected due to the auditor's preliminary review in fiscal year 22 adjusted entries. We are scheduled to have the final audit report this month. During the audit, the beginning fund balance for fiscal year 23 is subject to change. Questions on the budget history?
Yeah, just very quickly, the FY 23 total expenditures, $87.8 million, that includes the most recent amendments that the board has approved, or does that have to get added in?
No, that is your budget as of today, so
So
we
that,
have to amend it.
that has been included, okay, great, thank you.
1 and 2 are included.
Great, thank you.
General fund revenue. In looking at budget changes for the past 5 years, the district's revenue has increased by approximately 34%, or a little under $22 million from fiscal year 19 to present, with the largest increase of $17 million coming from local tax revenue. State revenue has increased by approximately $4 million, or 13.8%. Under tax revenue, highlighted in gray, is the millage rate, which has increased twice during the last 5 years, resulting in an increase in revenue of approximately $4.5 million. Listed under the millage rate is the residential digest value, which has increased each year. Highlighted in green is the total net digest value, which has steadily increased from fiscal year 19 to present. The digest has increased by approximately $10.6 million. I have broken down the percent increase due to digest growth from reassessment and digest growth from new properties. State revenue, which is tied directly to student enrollment, scheduling, and other student factors, has decreased by $777,548. That's highlighted in yellow, due to decreased enrollment. The local 5 meal share, highlighted in blue, which is the contribution from the district required to participate in the QBE program, has increased by $2.1 million. The local 5 meal share in the QBE formula refers to the portion of the direct and indirect instructional costs that the state requires local districts to pay with local funds. The local 5 meal share is deducted from QBE earnings. When local funds increase, so does the amount the state requires us to contribute. State-funded teacher raises of 2,000 that were allocated in fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 23 increased state revenue by approximately 2.4 million, as shown highlighted in orange. Are there any questions on the budget revenue history?
Yes, and this may be a little bit difficult to answer today, so if we have to come back, this is totally fine. When we talk about tax revenue, in this case, it's almost all, if not all, property tax revenue, correct?
Correct.
And so when we say, I'm looking at this number, the 10 million, 10.5 million, in green next value. Is that a difference? Is that a year-to-year? How much 19 to 23?
That's the total, increase over the last 5 years.
In the total value of the digest? So is the digest?
I can break it down and provide you with the numbers.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it because it's 2.4 billion minus 1.76 billion, right? Would that not? So maybe back up. Like, I don't want to get into the weeds of this. What would be I am curious about is that it says that the percent change from 19 to 23 in the tax revenue is 51.4%. So the implication there is we are collecting 51.4% more in taxes, correct?
Over the last 5 years.
Yes. And so some percentage of that 51.4% is native growth in the digest, and some percent of that is new construction. And you have broken down the 6.64 versus 5.8 for 12.44 difference in growth. I don't quite understand how the 51.4% relates to the 12.4%. This is like a really nuanced and detailed question that I'm asking as I'm seeing this slide in detail for the first time, and so I apologize. I'm not trying to surprise anybody. If you need a little bit of time to go back and look at it, I totally understand. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's kind of where my thinking is as I'm looking at that. I'd like to understand that.
You're just asking, of the percent change in the increase in tax revenue, which is 51.4, what percent of that 51.4 is related to net digest value?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think a question that a community member that has lived in this community over this period of time would be highly interested in knowing is, what is the increase in tax that we as a system are taking from them on their home that they've lived in the whole time, right? So that's going to be a combination of the millage change and a combination of the growth of the value of their home over this period of time. Does that make sense?
It does. So you have the digest growth from the new property in the reassessment as far as the percentage. But are you asking for dollar amount?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I think somebody would look at this and say 51.4% is the growth in how much taxes we're taking in. That's been the growth in taxes over this period of time. But the 12.4%, the difference between 6.64 digest growth versus 5.8 of new construction doesn't add to that 51.4. And I suspect that 12.44% is the ratio of that percentage is what's in that 51.4. I just would like to look.
That 12.44.
That's just last year.
That answers it for me. So what would be interesting then is what's that ratio overall? Does that make sense? Yes, thank you.
This is your current 2022 property tax digest and 5-year history of levy. We touched on this a little in the previous slide. This slide breaks out the value of real and personal taxes from motor vehicles. The amount that was deducted from the digest for exemptions is also listed. The total taxes levied is listed for each year, and the dollar and percentage amount increase. This slide gives you an overview of the breakdown of total taxes levied for the past 5 years.
Motor vehicle tax rates?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what they do? Okay. Very annoying.
So Lenita, for this, the less exemptions, there's no change in that from well, there's minimal change between 2021 and 2022. Why is that? Didn't the exemption expire?
This form is provided by the county,
Okay, okay.
so I'll have to get the total M&O taxes levied.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Have a question?
Oh, no.
Major revenue influencers that impact general fund include changes in local sources, including increases or decreases in millage rate, growth in tax digest, and increases and decreases in tuition. Changes that impact state funding include the governor's state budget, enrollment, class scheduling, reductions from local fair share, austerity cuts, and changes in teachers' pay scale. This is a breakdown of budgeted expenditures history from 2019 to 2023. The district expenses have increased from 2019 to present by approximately 21% or 15 million. Some of the factors that have contributed to the increase are highlighted below. Teacher salary adjustments, highlighted in pink, have increased by 8.4 million from fiscal year 19 to present. Teachers in certified positions paid on the teacher's salary have received salary scale adjustments and step increases each year. Classified salary adjustments, highlighted in blue, have increased by 2.5 million from fiscal year 19 to present. Classified staff have received step increases each year and a cost of living adjustment for every year with the exception of the current year. Salary increases account for an increase of approximately 11 million over the last 5 years. Another factor that has had a significant impact on increased expenditures is the addition of new positions. The opening of Tally in fiscal year 20 accounted for an increase of approximately 4.4 million in new positions. Additional positions were added each year, which account for a total of 5.5 million in new positions for fiscal year 19 to present. Questions on the budget expenditures? Major expenditure influencers include enrollment growth, which impacts allotment and class size, and compensation and benefits, which are the largest portion of the budget. Next, we will look at the 4-year history of general fund actions. This slide shows the actual expenditures from fiscal year 19 to 22. The increases such as tally opening and salary increases and adjustments were previously explained on the budget expenditure slide. The ending fund balance for each year was above the 4% minimum fund balance as required by board policy. The large ending fund balance in fiscal year 19 and 20 allowed us to give teachers a 2,000 raise, although the governor initially planned to give the raise and did not, and allowed the district to effectively operate without disruption and without any type of layoff during the COVID pandemic.
I think that's worth pointing out to the community, right? Like this, so what happened in that year is effectively the district from the fund balance floated a reasonably large raise to the teachers in the district. Now, the state did come in the following year, which is why we're able to see the fund balance starting to grow again. But I certainly appreciate the work keeping us in the black on that, because that is, we were able to do a good thing for our teachers and keep the fund balance healthy. So thanks.
This slide is a comparison of the budget to actual. From fiscal year 19 to 22, if the number is a negative in parentheses, this means the actual came in higher than the budget. If the number is not in parentheses, this means the budget was higher than the actual. For example, total revenue came in over budget for every year for fiscal year 21. In fiscal year 21, revenue came under budget. In fiscal year 22, the state revenue is the largest difference. The 3.9 million total revenue over budget in fiscal year 22 is due primarily to the state restoring austerity and additional revenue given by the state for bonuses and other salary supplements. Expenses for each year came in under budget, with fiscal year 19 total being 4.7 million. Budget process. The budget process begins with looking at the current fiscal year 23 budget and incorporating any known increases or decreases into the budget. The ending fund balance for the current year will be the beginning fund balance for the fiscal year 24 budget. Budget forecasting in the planning phase includes reviewing enrollment, scheduling, allotment, and the local fair share, and the impact the millage rate will have on revenue. We look at homestead exemption and the impact salary and benefit adjustments will have on the district. Reviewing and analyzing revenues and expenditures assumptions and establishing budget priorities is the first step in the budget process. This process took place at November's work session. The next step in the planning phase is to review the state budget process. This slide is a summary of the state budget process. We watch this process closely because this is where we will learn what, if any, salary increases will be proposed. The governor gave the state of address in mid-January. The information obtained from the state budget process is instrumental in establishing the district's tentative budget and amendments to the current budget. Some of the highlights on the governor's fiscal year 24 budget for education include the following. And you will see that I marked through some of the numbers that you were initially given, and that's because changes have been made since then. This process will continue to change. $2,000 raises for all earned certified employees paid on the teacher's salary scale. The district will need to fund unearned positions and must decide how to balance classified employee salaries for next year. A $2,000 salary increase for teachers and assistant teachers with the Department of Early Care and Learning is also being proposed. $60,000 per school for one-time safety grants. The governor initially proposed $50,000, and the House increased the amount by $10,000. $5 million in grants as incentives for paraprofessionals with a bachelor's degree to obtain their teacher's certification. $26.9 million have been allocated for new school counselors. School counselors will be fully funded at a ratio of 1 to 450. 5.1% salary increases for nutrition workers, bus drivers, and school nurses. $25 million for learning loss grants was initially proposed by the governor, and the House is recommending that schools use their funds from the American Recovery Plan Act. That's a stretch. And the largest and most surprising change is an increase from $940 a month to $1,580 a month for health care starting in January of 2023 for certified employees and January of 2024 for classified. The state will cover all certified employees as identified on the CPI. No austerity reduction is proposed this year. The financial impact of these proposed changes and options will be discussed at the next budget presentation. However, we must be mindful that there have been situations where the governor made proposed actions for a budget and those proposed actions changed. Prime example, the $2,000 increase for all employees that the district paid in 2020. Any questions on the governor's proposed budget?
Off the top of your head, do you know the number of FTE staff versus total number of staff? Okay.
Just for clarification, even though the change for January 2023 for certified, that hits the budget in January 2024, am I correct about that? It will hit.
We will have to amend the current budget, but the state is paying for all of the certified, so really it wouldn't have a financial impact. Our revenue would be.
Okay, and so it's next year's, well, I guess the budget that we're getting ready to build where we have to be concerned about the change. Okay, great.
It was initially scheduled for January of 2024, but they are going to phase it in, so it's still in discussion.
It's still not small, like that's gonna be enough.
Yeah.
So, the number one up there, $2,000, that's a one-time?
No.
Okay.
That will be built into their salary scale.
Okay. Per classified, gotcha. But then number 7 comes in, sorry, yeah, per certified. But then number 7 comes back and says, but you're on the hook for an extra $640 for everybody, for every class. So the local school districts are on the hook for state covered, which is a very large percentage. And we're on the hook for an extra $640 for everybody. Thanks,
Yeah.
state.
It's sizable.
Wait, but
They
did
give
you
you one
say,
thing and take out something
but did
else.
you say for number 7, the state is covering that for the rest of 2023?
For certified employees, because classified employees, that wouldn't start until January 2024. So that's when we will see the financial.
For everybody starting in 2024? Okay.
This is a visual of the district budget process. We're currently in the planning phase of the process. We're working with departments and schools to prioritize budget requests and allotments and closely reviewing the state budgeting process. We will move into the preparation phase in March. At this phase, revenue assumptions can be made based off of the governor's state of the state address. Expenditures assumptions will also be assessed at this phase. The preparation phase and the analysis and review phase run concurrently in many areas. We will also review community input received from the web page and incorporate board budget priorities. We are in the process of setting up budget meetings as needed with principals and department heads. Several presentations, discussion, budget hearings, and millage rate hearings. The 4 budgets will be consolidated into a district-wide consolidation budget draft and presented to the board as the tentative budget. Community input will be solicited for comments on the tentative budget. The superintendent and I will ensure all stakeholders are part of the decision-making process, and a final consolidated budget by fund and function will be presented to the board for adoption and approval. The board is scheduled to tentatively approve the fiscal year 24 budget at April's board meeting and final approval at May's board meeting. After the board's final approval, the finance department will begin implementation of the budget on July 1st. Finance department, in conjunction with budget managers at the school and department level, will review and assess the budget on an ongoing basis to keep track of how WEA programs are being implemented and the rate of which funds are being expended. The finance department, superintendent, and board are committed to being good stewards of the taxpayers' funds by operating with high integrity in a manner that is transparent and honest.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lenita.
In particular, I want to thank the extra work done. I know I asked for a lot, we asked for a lot on this, but I think it set us up very well. And this was precisely what we looked for.
I also want to thank you for the debt service and mentioning that every time. Your work and redoing the bond when interest rates were low is a service to the city, and it was shown in that one small bar of that graph. That's appreciated.
Right, our next presentation is an update on the district improvement plan. And I'm going to call up to the podium several individuals, Dr. Christy Bean, Dr. Huddleston, Jenna Simon. Where are you presenting? You're just here for entertainment purposes. Okay. All right, well, I'm going to kick us off. I've got the first 2 slides. Esther, you can go to the next slide. So as we shared previously with the board and our community, we use our CSD framework for equitable outcomes to organize our work and focus the work that we have been doing previously, because we have not had a strategic plan. And to achieve our equitable outcomes for students, we focus on what we teach, how we teach, and providing systems of support for our students. Next slide, please.
Okay, sorry.
So the way we have organized our updates is we have been using these phases of implementation of research, design, invest, implement, and complete. We are changing those very slightly for our new strategic plan once that is shared with the public and the board. We organize this by looking at strategic initiatives, and then this is where we will be giving implementation highlights for where we are with the different phases of implementation in those different 4 areas of what we teach, how we teach, and the systems of support that we have in place for our students. The next slide shows the current priority outcomes that the board and the superintendent have set to achieve focusing our work on student achievement as well as mental health and student well-being, and then also ensuring we have equitable outcomes for our students. Okay, so then I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Beam. She's going to give a highlight on the mid-year data update. Thank you, Dr. Beam.
Yes, we are grateful. The teaching and learning team and the equity and student services team is grateful to be here to update you on our current progress in regards to our priority student outcomes for this school year. So all the current baseline data was presented in Q1, and it does represent the data from the end of last school year. So we're comparing our baseline data from the end of last school year to our actual mid-year data from this school year and our year-end projections from mid-year to this school year. So let's start with growth for all students. We can see that in reading, we can see the percentage of our end-of-year students that met their growth targets as determined by measures of academic progress or the MAP test. And then we can see where we are at mid-year. So we can see that we have some celebrations in 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 8th grade, and they have already exceeded the number of students that met their growth target as compared to the end-of-year growth last year. We still have the opportunity to exceed end-of-year expectations in all grade levels as mid-year data is intended to inform our instructional adjustments for students.
Could I ask a quick question
Sure.
on this? Two questions. One is it typical over the course of the year that the mid-year data improves towards the end of the year?
Yes, so yes, here in Decatur, we do see, and in fact, actually, our teachers and administrators, we often refer to it as the winter dip. So we do see actually a greater increase or greater students meeting their growth projections at the end of the year. So
Is there any way when we show this next time we could see what the mid-year was in 22? Just because I think, like if you look at if you look at first grade, 50% to 74%, if last year's mid-year was at 40% and it grew to 74%, then we're in good shape. If last year's mid-year data was 70% and it grew to 74%, then we're a little bit worried about where we are right now. I think that would help us evaluate where we are.
yeah, we have that available.
And we talked about that, and one of the things that was important is there has been criticism in the past that our baseline data changes over time, so we wanted to make sure we kept that baseline data the same throughout all of these presentations.
That I appreciate, yeah.
So that's why we were very intentional about keeping our baseline data the same and using the same numbers to try to interpret where we are in progress. I think what's helpful for us when we look at this data as instructional practitioners is we can say in kindergarten, we know we've got 64% of our students on track to meet their growth projection. We want to get to 88-something%, so we want to keep those 64% on their current trajectory, but then we want to fine tune, okay, what's happening with that missing percentage to get them caught up where they need to be and get them on the right track to meet that goal that we have set for ourselves.
Yeah, it's also important to remember when we set these goals, it was a little bit challenging because we had kind of had a gap for 3 years, so we weren't really sure what that looked like. What we are seeing, and we can share that drill down data with you, looking at last year, mid-year, and even back before the pandemic. And what we're seeing is this year is looking more like the pre-pandemic numbers than last year, which does make a little bit of sense. If you have students that had 3 years of gaps in learning, then their growth was significantly more than last year. So, especially at the earlier grades where they had some learning. Okay, so when we get to we can see that 2nd grade has surpassed the expectations at this point. And again, that this offers us some opportunity to support the schools, to really drill down into this data so that we can make those critical instructional adjustments. Our next goal that was set was that we will increase the percentage of Black students meeting grade level proficiency on math. Now, to define grade level proficiency, we use the preset map boundaries, both MAP and STAR, which is used at our high school, use the 41st percentile to say that a student is average grade level achievement. And so that was the breakdown that we used to determine efficiency in K2. So we are very excited with this data, and we can see that the achievement of our Black students has increased mid-year over last year's baseline in reading and math in all 3 grade levels.
Just a clarifying question, Dr. Bean, the goal is to go up by 10%.
Yes.
For all of these. So in first grade, you would have wanted to go from 54 to 64, 44 to 54. So you've gotten there for those two. But if we back up here, in a lot of these metrics,
Growth projection.
we've gotten
Yeah.
some growth, but we haven't met,
Right.
we haven't
Correct.
met our
Yeah.
goals yet. Okay.
Right. So we have that opportunity to do so by this. Absolutely.
And it looks here, so we're saying here that the percent of Black students who are only averaging 41 in the 41st percentile, second grade, African-American students started out at 44%.
That's end of year last year. So last year's second graders, 44% were at the 41st percentile or below,
Or below.
or above, sorry, yep.
That would be this year's third graders.
Right, yes.
Then our next metric is the percent of Black students that are projected to score a level 3 or 4 on GMAT. And I can say that the MAP data is quite accurate on their predictions. So we do have more students at each grade level predicted to or projected to score proficiently or above on Georgia Milestone Test.
Do we have we don't have to go in the weeds on this, but I would be interested in understanding what our hypothesis is about the variability between the grades here. Because, I mean, we go from 43% to 29%. That's a pretty big range. I get the grades are different, but I'd be curious what our hypothesis is there.
And so then when we get to math, we aren't yet seeing as many celebrations, but we do have some growth projected in 6th and 8th grade, yay Beacon Hill, and that's some pretty significant growth in 8th grade, so we are happy to see that we were able to address some of the concerns from we also, when we are looking at math and talking about the things that we need to do, you will hear later on that we are aware that there's a need, the state board is aware that there's a need, the new math standards are coming out, and there's a definite need, and these data support that there's a definite need for deep work in K-12 mathematics that you'll hear about a little bit later on in the presentation.
What is the baseline on this?
That how students scored last year on their 8th grade GMAT math assessment.
So 14%,
Scored in a level 3 or 4.
More than double it.
and we expect, based on mid-year tests, 34%. Okay.
Yeah, 8th grade math across the state saw that trend in a significantly lower math achievement at the end of 8th grade last year. And when you kind of back up time-wise, the fundamentals that many of the students missed through the pandemic and online learning, I think that's the rationale that most people are attributing that really low achievement last year.
But I think the point here, which is noteworthy, which sticks out, and I'm happy that it's gone up, is that at the end of last year, only 14% of our 8th graders scored a 3 or 4 on the GMAT.
Yes.
Like, that should stick out.
It does.
And, you know, we don't have this to compare to their white counterparts, but across the board, these are, you know, we do have some room to say that these numbers have gone up. Many of them haven't met your goal here, but these are surprising numbers for your African-American students. And we can go through and read them. You don't have to read them to us, but the question is, well, why? You know, why are you seeing such disproportionality? And then if you've gotten such a big jump in the 8th grade, why do you see this jump in the 8th, but a decline in the 7th, based on your projections? That's kind of, when I look through this, the questions that I have. I mean, we can sit here and read the numbers all day, but, you know, if you are only seeing a 9% growth or a 4% growth, you know, are you only seeing your predicted number of kids to go down, or level 1 on the GMAT only to go down 1%?
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to what we've discussed for years. You know, you have variability in instruction, you have variability in teachers teaching the standards that the test is measuring. And so, you know, you can look and see clearly the work that we've done with ELA across the district and the training we've done with teachers and the adoption of curriculum and digging into standards, and that's the work. And then we're starting to see results from that. And we have to do that same work in that.
But that doesn't explain the race variable here. If you have a classroom full of students and you tell the teachers, Tasha White, you teach the standards and teach the whole classroom, you're breaking this down and telling us this is clearly, you're breaking this down by race. So why is it that we have these struggles in math, especially in your 8th grade African American students? And this is carried on. I mean, we've heard this presentation before, and, you know, sometimes it gets better. Well, what have you done, and how can we replicate it? Because some parts of this, I guess I don't understand what we can do and how we can do it better. I mean, even saying that only 30-something% of lower elementary students are getting threes even, is some room to grow. So I don't know. I just don't understand the why behind this data. We can read it to ourselves, you know, not that to cut off your presentation, but.
Yeah, I think the important point here is, I mean, we're glad we have a target to improve towards, and that it has improved in some of these cases. But let's not lose sight of the fact that 14% is abysmally low, and that is that moving to 34% isn't really something to celebrate. That is, we went from awful to still not good. And so I think I don't know. Yeah, I think that understanding when these bars move is what's important. I think is what I was hearing Dr. Sultan saying. I would agree. When we see it move, what can get replicated, and how can that move across? It's not just about measuring it, it's about consistently and repeatedly improving it.
Focus on what our goals are and how to meet.
I think one of the big things that we've noticed this year is our changing in grading practices to focus on standards-based grading is allowing our teachers and administrators to see, here's the standards where our students are not doing well, so that we can adjust instruction and focus on those standards so that we can remediate and enrich and accelerate students. Because before this year, 6, 8, our teachers were not necessarily grading on the standards. They were looking at the IB curriculum, they were focusing on that, grading projects on those criteria, and not leaning into the assessments. And that's how you can easily get to a place where only 14% of your students are scoring proficient or above, because you're not focused on the standards.
And I appreciate that. You guys are educators. I'm not. But to me, this looks like, based on your projections, 60-something% of your 8th graders are going to go on to high school with a math score of a 1 or a 2, which to me sounds unacceptable. And the question to me is, based on what you're saying, that does not account for why these are African-American students that are progressing from middle school to high school with math skills that, based on state standards, are 1 or 2. So we can keep teaching the state standards, but that smiling to hear what you do with Black students, so why?
What I think is important here is, without assessing and teaching the standards, is we've never been able to disaggregate why our Black students are not performing on that level. So there hasn't been the data there to say and to tease out and understand why there's a difference. So now, for the first time, we do have real data on a monthly basis to work and support these students and identify which teachers are doing well, which aren't doing well, what practices is that teacher doing that are effective in their classroom, so that we can replicate those.
We can see where grades are inflated, we can see if students are being held accountable to high expectations, we can help the teachers to, be held, or hold teachers accountable for what are we doing and what supports are we providing these students in that moment, and not waiting until the end of the year to see data that looks like this.
It doesn't solve the problem that it's abysmal data. We're not arguing that point, but I think for the first time since I've been a part of the district, we can say, here's what we can do to support those kids to get them on track by the time the grade ends.
I think I would love to hear that. Right, so I get this is not great data. I think we're all sort of accepting that. And I think we all very much appreciate that we're actually able to measure it and track it in a consistent way now.
Yeah.
But now that we have, what I'm hearing Dr. Sultan say, and certainly where my head's at, is, okay, but so what?
Yeah, so that's kind of the last couple slides where they talk about that.
Yeah.
The areas,
I was waiting
yeah.
for that, because I
So
had,
the part of it is we've got to look at the data, because if we don't look at the data and put it out there, you'll think, oh, well, maybe we're doing okay. So it is important to say, this data doesn't look great, we know it's a problem, what are we doing about it? And then that's the next phase that we're going to hear about.
Right.
And for me, the most important thing is to really humanize the data and look at the students behind, instead of looking at these graphs year after year after year. What I've been doing with the principals this year is we have been meeting, we've been talking about the students. They were given students that at the end of last year were not performing at grade level, and so we have been talking about what supports are they getting. My team meets with, if they're a student that's in intervention, for example, the principals, if the student's not making growth within 6 weeks, to please bring those students to our attention so that we can look at the intervention plan. We can see, is the intervention being effective? We can get fresh eyes on it. We can use our math experts, and we can say, if these interventions aren't effective, do we need more intervention? Do we need a different intervention? So I think, that's what's important, is that we're looking at each and every student, and not just continuing to look at the graphs at the end of the year.
Dr. Dean, those, intervention plans, those are for students in the MTSS, program?
Yes.
Process
Any
on that.
student, yes, any student that's in tier 2, tier 3 intervention. So, even if they're not, we have students that are not necessarily in EIP or REP,
Right,
but that would still receive tier 2 intervention.
okay.
And our students that are scoring, a level 1, now this is surprising, and this is where we need to look at the supports. We've got to dig in to, not just that students are getting, or in a program that is the intervention effective. So that is what, we have really been trying to dig into and look at the interventions. And so, this data was surprising to me.
And so we're gonna hear a little bit later about some of these interventions, is that what you were saying, Dr. Furman? Because this slide was the one I was waiting to ask a question about, in terms of, I know Dr. Furman explained to me earlier that for these students, say, 7th grade, where it's projected, or 5th grade, 3rd, 6th, and 7th, that more students will score at the level 1. And I was curious, if you said, well, this is, we're gonna use this data, so I was curious, like, what kind of interventions are we gonna use for these students?
Right, and so these are 41% is horrible, but when we're talking about such a small number of students, and so what we are doing now is naming the students, and we are seeing, where are these students now, what is happening, what has been done, what could be done between now and the end of the year, what is not working, why are they still, or what is happening? Because these might be, students with severe disabilities, these might be students, well, what are they, what needs to happen to help these students achieve grade level proficiency. So that's what we're doing right now. And not only that, but triangulating the data. I mean, math is fraud data, so we have to dig into passing grade. We have to dig into common assessment. We have to dig into, so we have IFL, we have progress monitoring through AIMSWeb. What does that look like? And what is being done? Like you said, it's not just about measuring it, it's about what is the data telling us. So this data is just the big picture, and so now we have to name the students and see what's been done and what else.
And evaluate the teachers effectively and appropriately to see what effective practices our teachers are using in the classroom. Because the teachers teach the curriculum. We help evaluate and support and provide the resources for the staff. But it's really, we have to talk about how are we helping our teachers that aren't getting those results that we want so that they can increase the effectiveness of their instruction.
Good evening.
Everyone still awake?
Yeah.
All right. So we also have a priority outcome related to eliminating disproportionate discipline outcomes. So our goal for this year is to reduce the number of suspensions for Black students by 10% or more. And this table shows ISS and OSS from the end of last year, and then the next column is the current school year to date. So I do want to share with you that upon review of the data and preparation for this update, we noted a discrepancy in the baseline data that was presented in October. And in October, the number was larger for the numbers of suspensions, both ISS and OSS. So in digging into the data and comparing it with what was reported to the state, this is a corrected baseline for that, so I wanted to just give you that information. So this table, which includes that corrected baseline I mentioned, reflects a decrease in suspension for Black students. Note that the majority of the suspensions were still within 6th through 12th grade, is where we're seeing most of those.
Okay.
And in order to sort of work towards these changes, I heard you ask, like, how are you seeing changes happen? So we have a suspension prevention task force, and Dr. Banks talked about that during the first meeting. So we're working very closely with our administrators to help them to choose those alternatives to suspension when appropriate, and to be able to monitor more closely along the way, in addition to the changes of the code of conduct.
What is the, so in the first chart, for Black students, 96 to 67 is a roughly 30 reduction, right? But 196 to 104 is not a 47 reduction. What is the
Percentage.
Is that a number or is it percent? So the bottom chart is percent, the top chart is the raw reduction, or the top chart is the percent?
They're both percent.
Okay.
You mean the green box?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are.
So then,
Percent change.
if this is all percent change, even though we have achieved the 10% for Black students, we actually achieved an even better reduction for all of the other students than we did for the Black students. So we disproportionately for the non-African American students, right? So that's, I think, important to point out. Kudos for getting that number down, but we managed to still benefit the white students somehow in the process of doing it, right? Okay.
We've been looking at this data and looking at, over 5 years, and what we've seen is that the gap has been closing, but going down for everyone.
These percentages would imply the gap is increasing. Even though it's going down for everyone, it's going down more for the non-students of color.
So note that in mid-year data for ISS and OSS, we don't always see that start to taper off towards, sometimes looking at it year over year, we do see that this part of the year, until the end of the school year, is when we really have to redouble our efforts to, look at alternatives to suspension.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would look at this data and say, this is reflective, the overall reduction is reflective of instructional staff being more aware that there are alternatives to suspension, right?
I wouldn't say instructional staff, I would say administrative.
Administrative, okay, whoever is in charge of assigning us the suspensions are more aware that there are alternatives and we're trying to reduce it.
And I would say, sorry, Lily.
I was just gonna talk a little bit about the tier one work
Yeah.
that we're doing. So we have TBIS, which helps in the classroom to prevent, behaviors that may occur from even being referred on to an administrator. So there's a lot of work that's done there, that changes our numbers. And then we have, the suspension prevention, but that's after we've already gotten into a situation where it's clear that there's something in the code of conduct that we need to address at the administrative level. So there are many things that are coming together from restorative practices at tier one, tier two, and tier three that influence the numbers that.
So I don't mean to keep harping on this, but the general reduction, the high level of general reduction in suspension is not being applied proportionately to our Black students. So even these benefits that we're putting out there, our Black students are not benefiting from them as much as the rest of our students, per this data. Okay. That doesn't feel like a success to me. Like that doesn't feel like what, I'm not trying to say everybody thinks that's a success. I feel like maybe there's a way to rethink this goal to ensure that this goal is reflective of the fact that we meant to reduce it. We're trying to close the gap between how Black students and all other students are being treated. And this data would indicate that we actually increased it. Right.
I don't know that I would say that because you're not looking at 2 years of data here. I mean, you're looking at 1 year of data comparison. You would have to look at it at a trend over several years to determine a gap change.
That's not wrong. The reduction percentage for our Black students in this 1 year, which is not a sufficient end, which is what you're saying, I agree. But in this 1 year is less for our Black students than it is for all of our other students. And so that was concerning.
I have 2 questions about this table. Well, 3. This is grades 6 through 12, right? All grades. And is there a way to, I assume that if you get all the way to OSS, this decision is made by an administrator. Is ISS that decision made by an administrator as well? Is there a way to are these numbers broken down by administrators so you can see is there a trend? A trend by administrator? Or a trend by school and administrator?
We definitely have the data broken down by school.
And I think it's important to see if there's a particular trend by a particular administrator, especially with OSS, because that's significant learning loss time. And then that speaks to things like bias, which we could definitely target. The other thing, especially with kind of lower elementary grades, and you may not have this data, but it's something to think about, is time where a teacher puts a kid out of class. So it may not register as ISS or OSS, but go to the principal's office, you're acting up, or go to the PE teacher's office. And that's not necessarily ISS, but it's time out of class, which all of this, the problem here is all learning loss. And those things aren't measured well, but there's often, again, inherent bias with teachers that use that as a disciplinary tool. It can be traced and tracked over time for trends, and how we can improve ways using PBIS to redirect without taking time out of the classroom. Problem with OSS and ISS, punishing them for taking it. But sometimes it's, go to the PE teacher, go sit in the principal's office, go sit in the principal's office for a while, and then they're
Working very hard to make sure that any time out of class is documented, even for the lower grades. So I can share again that data that's aggregated, and you'll see that there's some OSS for lower grades that's documented because we wanted to look at that. We wanted to make sure that we're capturing that there can be just a miscellaneous, out of class placement, because that is
Dr. Huddleston, is there, at the high school, for example, is there more than one administrator that handles ISS and OSS?
Yes,
Oh,
all
okay.
of the AP.
All the AP, yeah.
Primarily the AP.
Mhm.
That's one of the reasons that we've been meeting with the AP every month this school year, because we realized that if we could spend some time, training them, giving, more PL around sort of practices, really looking at the data every single time, looking at cases, and, trying to really dig in and understand, like, why was suspension used here, why is this appropriate, is it inappropriate? We've put in a number of different measures, like, each time they write a referral, they're submitting a form that goes to us and to me to be able to make sure that they have checked through all of the areas of due process, all of the areas of, have you considered, these key factors before you have made this decision, or you try an alternative. So we have been putting in a number of things, and then at one of our next meetings, I'm hoping that our behavior interventionists can come with the APs as well, to work with them on, identifying why the behavior is happening, what in the environment, what in terms of student-teacher interactions need to happen, and looking at it from a behavioral standpoint instead of community.
Dr. Huddleston, I had a question. So, and just a clarification, the top table is Black students, the bottom table is all students, not white students, but all students. Okay, thank you. Are included in that number. Okay, thank you. The other question I had is, are the numbers of students being disciplined or numbers of incidences?
Number of students.
So you don't know how many days of ISS, how many days of OSS were assigned. We just know that 96 Black students were assigned ISS last year, 67 this year at this point. Okay.
And one student could have multiple infractions in that, within
Yes.
that data set too.
Right.
When is the 2023 data through? Because we still have some months left in the school year.
The last day of school.
Okay. So, but so far, we've just, through today,
Yes.
the number of them.
Yes.
Okay. And then some, we did get a, oh boy. And Dr. Sultan made a comment that made my brain think. Another data point that would be interesting is, are there a particular category of infractions that are responsible for the number of suspensions? I don't know if you meant to say it, but you said, like tier 2, tier 3, the way it speaks to the student handbook, the way that there are rules that say, well, this type of activity, this form of misbehavior is a natural OSS. You hear it all the time. Well, they were fighting, so of course we had to suspend them. Well, if that's responsible for everything, maybe we need to revisit that, if that's what the data shows.
And you're just gonna find with discipline, it is a culture shift, it's a sea change for how teachers respond, how they reaccept students back into their classroom. It's a massive endeavor. I'm pleased that we're seeing reductions in out-of-school suspension and in-school suspension. That, for me, is just a win. We want to see it change equitably across the board, but we're making gains. And I think that's a celebration for a system to say we are reducing the number of days our students are missing instruction.
Yeah, I don't want to lose sight of the fact, though, that it is inequitable in the way that it's changed. Like, that is something that, it's great that it's going down, but it is going down more for the rest of the students than it is for our Black students. And I want us to kind of stay laser focused on that's not what we want in reality.
So I'll talk just briefly about attendance. So here I'm excited to share a little bit about, oh, no, that's earlier.
I think we can see the chart, Lily. We got it.
So here, our goal is to decrease the percentage of students in each grade level missing 10 or more days of school. That's the time point where social workers are very much engaged in figuring out exactly what's going on, providing additional support beyond what the school is doing to work with students related to attendance. So at this time point, our data suggests that we have fewer absences, and you can see that the percentages are lower at this time point during the school year. So hopefully we're on track to meeting that goal, beating that goal. And the social workers are working with the school-based attendance committees, and they've instituted some new protocols to help with reducing.
Don't be nervous. Come on up. Who's next?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for allowing me to share the second quarter professional growth highlights with you. CSD continues to invest in our staff through the highest quality differentiated training. This school year, the following professional learning opportunities have been provided. The Science of Reading short course is endorsed by the Skank School in Atlanta and is developed in collaboration with advisors from Barksdale Reading Institute, Hill Learning Center, the Reading Teacher's Top 10 Tools, Right to Read Project, and a 95% group. This offers a one-of-a-kind overview of the science behind effective reading instruction. CSD has enrolled all of our district-wide literacy instructors and leaders in this 15-hour self-paced, efficient introduction to the science of reading. The modules include course introduction on how we learn to read, an introduction to the science of reading, structured literacy, the word recognition domain, the language comprehension domain, reader's knowledge, the language comprehension domain, processes and strategies, reading comprehension, and course wrap-up. Each module includes clearly stated learning objectives aligned with Bloom's taxonomy. Upon successful passing an end-of-year course assessment, participants receive a certificate of completion that indicates 15 contact hours. This year, CSD is also implementing the second cohort of the Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling, also known as LETTERS. This comprehensive professional learning is designed to provide CSD's early childhood and elementary educators with skills needed to master the foundational and fundamental of reading and writing instruction, phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and written language. The district is also excited about offering letters to our CSD administrators this summer. Teaching and Learning Department understands that the Orton-Gillingham approach, the idea of breaking reading and spelling down into smaller skills involving letters and sounds, and then building on these skills over time. Word recognition is best taught through a approach, wherein students develop knowledge and skills about how the alphabet works to become expert decoders. Children can then apply the knowledge they learn to decode and encode new words. CSD is currently implementing its third Orton-Gillingham 70-hour course and will be promoting enrollment for its fourth cohort this summer. Also this summer, in part, the district is offering additional OG courses: morphology and history of the language, reading comprehension, handwriting, Orton-Gillingham lesson planning and implementation, grammar and diagramming, vocabulary and writing. Now I will share some curriculum and instruction second quarter highlights. CSD is continuing to create a learning environment where we can teach our students rigorous, historically accurate content that elevates marginalized voices. The district social studies and science committees are continuing the curriculum evaluation review. Both committees will be prepared to share their findings and recommendations during the May 23rd Board of Education work session. The dyslexia workforce was designed this year to support CSD in building an informed and educated school community that proactively identifies struggling readers and delivers sustainable, equitable, and proven effective reading instruction for all students, including those who are diagnosed with traits of dyslexia or characteristics of dyslexia, and or struggling readers to become skilled lifelong readers. The task force has no official decision-making authority, but will summarize their findings and make recommendations to the CSD administration and board for consideration during the May 9th Board of Education meeting. The committee consists of the following stakeholders: Dr. Jennifer Lindstrom, the Georgia Department of Education statewide dyslexia coordinator, CSD district leadership, district specialists, school building leadership, teachers, and parents. Foundations is what I'm going to talk about next. Foundations is the City Schools of Decatur K-3 core phonics curriculum that's aligned with the science of reading. District reading coach, Dr. Carla Zissuk, Glenwood instructional coach, Jill Tolsma, and Glenwood early intervention teacher, Amelia Cox, have completed 3/4 of the year-long demonstration site school facilitator training with Foundations coordinator, Susan Elwise, who's in charge of the Wilson Language Training Literacy Department. This training enables CSD to build district capacity to assist teachers with setting up, implementing, and evaluating the proper implementation of the Foundations Core Phonics curriculum successfully in all of our elementary schools. The site school grade level study groups will be launched in August 2023 at Glenwood Elementary School. During the 23-24 school year, facilitator training will also be extended to the district reading coach, Dr. Gail Hardwick, and instructional coaches that serve the grades 3-5 schools. Currently, Dr. Hardwick and the building instructional coaches at Tally and Fays are providing a Tier 2 accelerated word study program for struggling readers called Just Words. Just Words is a highly explicit, multi-sensory decoding and spelling program used for students in grades 4 and 5 who have mild to moderate gaps in their decoding and spelling proficiency. The district reading coaches meet monthly with K-5 building leaders and instructional coaches to present the following triangulated data to discuss differentiated support for each grade level in literacy. And this is a new practice. They look at the math data, which is a growth and achievement benchmark tool. They look at the IRLA, a progress monitoring and benchmark tool designed by the American Reading Company, which is our ARC literacy curriculum that delivers specific, actionable data that tells the teacher where a student is, why, and the sequence of skills needed to be learned next to accelerate reading growth. They also look at the Foundations and Just Words summatives. Lastly, this winter we present national and statewide literacy presentations on behalf of CSD. Dr. Christy Beam, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, and Dr. Gail Hardwick, District Reading Coach, was selected to serve on a National American Reading Company panel to discuss the City Schools of Decatur's successful Year 2 launch of the 5-year literacy K-5 SPARK core curriculum adoption. Dr. Jennifer Lindstrom, once again, the Georgia Department of Education statewide dyslexia coordinator, invited the City Schools of Decatur, Literacy, and MTSS departments to participate in 2 statewide dyslexia pilot district panels. One session was held this past February, and the upcoming one is March 9th, where Erica Godfrey, coordinator of MTSS, and myself presented and will present next month. Thank you.
I have a question. I'm not sure how to read this slide. Can you just for example, this one, what do each of those boxes mean?
So that goes back to our implementation phases from the second or third slide. So things that are in the complete box are initiatives or trainings or things we have completed as a district. But that means we're still collecting data and monitoring those. If we're in the invest and implement, that means we have assigned and allocated funding and we're starting the implementation phase.
Okay.
If it's in the research and design phase, it means we're still looking at it, discovering what we need to do, and designing the implementation rollout.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Great question. No.
Good evening. I know y'all have a long night, but thank you so much for having me come and speak to you about the work that we're doing on the math team in the district. First, the math district team has been preparing for the implementation of new Georgia math standards for grades K-12 starting in August of 2023. The work has included informing all stakeholders of the new math pathways for the middle and high school that will begin next August. We began this work in October of 2022 with parent meetings and SLTs. Currently, we have middle school teachers enrolled in the GACE preparation course to certify them to teach the new enhanced algebra course for 8th graders. This will ensure that students whose families choose for them to take this class will receive high school credit for the course. The middle school is also providing decision guides for families on which class best suits their scholars' math needs, and families are currently choosing their classes right now. As far as the curriculum for the new math standards, for the past 2 years, the district math team has examined different curriculum and resources for CSD students. The curriculum adoption was paused in January of 2022 due to the new math standards being postponed by the state to being released in August of 2023. During this time, the team defined the math instructional beliefs for CSD, which became the focal point of the search for a curriculum that met the beliefs and the needs of the students and teachers. Throughout the past year, we've collected feedback from all stakeholders on the need for math instruction and investigated different curriculum companies. The math team looked at the data, feedback, and went through several protocols to determine the needs of CSD. In December of 2022, the Georgia Department of Math released learning plans and resources for the new math standards for 2023. Teachers and coaches in CSD went to the DOE training in January where they learned of the learning plans. They learned that they were not only robust, but rigorous and met all the CSD math beliefs. The DOE curriculum is not only written by teachers in Georgia, but also incorporates the Georgia Numeracy Project and number talks that are already implemented in CSD math classrooms. After this release, the CSD teachers took time at CSD University to look through the state resources and learning plans. Afterward, teachers were asked to give feedback on which curriculum they would prefer to use next year, and the top contenders based on the feedback were the state DOE learning plans and illustrative math. The math district team took this feedback and reviewed and determined which curriculum would be best suited for CSD. While different school levels had different opinions on which to implement, it was very clear to the math team that teachers were looking for the following: targeted professional development on the new standards, resources such as manipulative student workbooks and assessment software, easy-to-use lessons that included student collaboration, grapple tasks, and meaningful connections to math, and a curriculum that aligns to the state standards. math team determined that spending money on textbooks or curriculum that didn't meet the needs of CSD would not be a good steward of money, and we would rather spend the money on professional development for teachers implementing the state math standards. Therefore, the math team voted to recommend that CSD use the state resources for the 23-24 school year. The math team will continue to map out the plan for the staff development and additional resources in the spring. CSD University, for the remainder of the year, will be dedicated to professional development of the new standards, so teachers and leaders are prepared for the August rollout. On top of that, we will be hosting parent math chats to inform the community about the changes in the math standards and what to expect with their child's math curriculum next year. By the way, I'm proud to say these ladies are on my team. This is Jennifer Dunn. She is our new Director of Math and Science that started this year, and this is working Simon.
Now I'm excited to highlight one of the collaborations between Equity and Student Services and Teaching and Learning Department. And this is one that's listed on the Invest and Implement slide, section. So as you're aware, we're committed here at CSD to creating a culture of student support that really supports the whole child. And one way that we're hoping to expand work in this area is by launching a pilot of a screening tool designed to identify student strengths and areas of growth related to social, emotional, and behavioral well-being. So we are piloting the behavior assessment for children, addition, the behavior and emotional screening system, or the BEST. And the BEST is a universal screener that research-based, easy to administer, only about 15 minutes long, and students can take that, bring their Google Chrome. So the results will help our schools to understand the needs of all students and guide them to make effective plans to support students in school, class, and individually. This is one of the efforts that I was mentioning before. We're looking at tier 1 efforts to make sure that we are addressing needs before they get to the level of becoming, a serious mental health concern or a serious behavioral. So this screener, the pilot will kick off with grades 3, 6, and 9, and the window for that is opening February 27th, and it goes through March 3rd, and then we'll have some makeup days in early March for that. So this is really an effort to help us learn more about how the BEST can be used to make sure that we're catching all of the children at a very early stage to be able to prevent any social or abuse.
Round it out with talking about our high-level practices. Last year, the teaching and learning team embedded culturally responsive indicators into the Georgia Teacher Evaluation Standards. This year, in collaboration with the equity teams, the federal programs, and the schools, we've been utilizing the CSD walkthrough tool to gather data about instructional processes. In the fall semester, we visited all classrooms and all schools, and are currently working on spring semester observations. From the fall data, our strengths were professional knowledge, meaning the teachers were addressing curriculum standards, knowing their content, and appropriate learning targets were evident in most classrooms. The data showed our area of growth is differentiation to meet all students' needs through remediation and acceleration. And we're looking forward to continuing our observations for this semester. So thank you for your time, and do you have questions for anyone on the team?
I also want to share that it's kind of an odd time because we're trying to continue our work here, but then also invest resources in getting things up and moving for the new strategic plan. So it's a really odd kind of culmination of trying to land a plane while we're getting ready to take another one off, trying to figure out what is working, what's not working, how are we capturing that data. So it's a really weird transition period for our district leaders because we don't want to be putting more on our teachers and school-based staff at this time while we're gearing up for what is coming next. So just wanted to put that out there for the board as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so the next thing on the board agenda item for discussion is the board work plan. So that was attached in the board packet as well as a description. Are there any questions or discussions about the board work plan for 2023, 2024? Okay, if there are none,
If there are none, may I have a
Chairman?
motion to approve the 2023-2024 work plan? Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The 2023-2024 board work plan is approved.
The last item on the agenda for discussion this evening is the housing permit to transition 2 of the CSD-owned properties to be multifamily homes. When the commissioners approved this transition for moving into multifamily homes, they approved only 3 permit schools. So in order to make sure that these properties could potentially be multifamily homes, we wanted to go ahead and apply for these permits. That doesn't mean this is gonna happen overnight. We've still got a lot of work to do to figure out timing, how this is gonna work. There's lots of different options to transition these homes to multifamily homes. CSD is not going to get into the business of being property managers or overseeing rental properties, but we do wanna have and contribute to the opportunity to create middle housing for the city of Decatur with these 2 properties. So that is why we want to go ahead and apply for these permits, see if we can get these approved. And then once those are either approved or not, we can move forward with deciding, are we going to invest resources and time to decide what is the next step for these properties. So at this time, I'm seeking approval from the board for me to act on their behalf to apply for these permits.
This is just for the permits, just
This-
for clarity.
Just for the permits. And as we move forward, this is not a revenue-making, thing for the district. This is not gonna spend lots of tax money. It will be budget neutral. We're not looking to try to make money off of this. We also do not want to spend tax money on, adjusting and, modifying houses. Like I said, we don't want to get into the property management business. Our business is teaching and learning.
It's really as simple as we own 3 properties. The trust made a presentation to the board. They may or may not be ideal for multifamily homes.
Mm-hmm.
To even begin the conversation, whatever that may be, we would need to apply for these permits.
Yes.
Budget neutral, we're not spending any money. We didn't hire Dr. Sultan to go check out the properties and stuff like that.
You can't afford her.
Fair enough. Okay, if there's no other questions, is there a motion to approve Dr. Furman to act on behalf of the board to apply for multifamily permits for 204 Westchester Drive and 927 South McDonough Street?
Move to approve Dr. Furman to act on behalf of the board to apply for multifamily permits for 204 Westchester and 927 South McDonough.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes. Thank you very much. We have future dates listed on the agenda for upcoming meetings, trainings, retreats, executive sessions. Board members, are there any questions about the future dates for work of the board?
Speaking of training, I'm one of those for Tasha. I'm just giving you your transcript. That one, this is Tasha's. Of all your certified GSBA board training. I think all board members currently have 6 hours. Just a reminder that you need 10 by the end of the year. We are going to be applying for some awards, and we do need all board members to have 10 hours of training. I also sent all the board members a save the date for the summer GSBA conference. So hopefully you are able to attend some or all of that conference, and you'll get all of your hours really quickly if you can to that conference. So please try to attend that if you can.
So that would give us the 10.
We need 4 more hours by the end of June.
Oh, so that would give us the additional, okay.
Yeah.
Got it, perfect.
So I highlighted 2 because the calendar of 10 hours is academic year, July 1st to June 30th.
But we already have plans for the 4 more hours.
We do not yet, which is why I was inviting a conference, or we will send out the GSBA online,
But if we go
catalog.
to the conference, we're good. If
Yeah.
you're not going to the conference, then we look at alternative ways to get those additional 4 hours.
Yeah.
Got it.
And it's the, Ashok, is it the pre-conference that they have to attend to get the hours, or do they get the hours at the conference?
There are some conference workshops before chair and one for the board members. They will get them during the.
Okay, good.
Excellent.
Signatures on the step session. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you all for joining us this evening. This meeting is adjourned at 9:07 p.m.
This is from the E, this is the resolution.